Well, good morning and welcome to AFA's Air and Space Warfighters in Action. I'm Wright, President and CEO of your Air and Space Forces Association. In the past week or so, the talk of our nation has been all about the new B-21 Raider and the critical importance of long-range strike. That's one reason we're so excited to introduce our two guests this morning from the 28th Bomb Wing at Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota. Wing Commander Colonel Joe Sheffield and Lieutenant Colonel Chris McConnell, commander of the Wing's 37th Bomb Squadron. The 28th Bomb Wing recently completed a Bomber Task Force mission in the Pacific, and it will be the first wing to get B-21 Raiders a few years from now. We'll get to all that in a moment, but first, we must thank our sponsors for their support. BAE Systems, Collins Aerospace, Dell Technologies, Elbit Systems of America, General Dynamics Mission Systems, Google Cloud, Gulfstream, L3 Harris, Lockheed Martin, Oracle Cloud, Pratt & Whitney, Raytheon Technologies, Rebellion Defense, the Roosevelt Group, and SAIC. Thank you. Now then, let's jump into it. The 28th Bomb Wing is the largest B-1 combat wing in the entire Air Force. Colonel Sheffield is responsible for more than 12,000 airmen and civilian personnel. And again with him this morning is Lieutenant Colonel Chris McConnell, who recently completed a Bomber Task Force mission to Guam that included the first B-1 flights over the Korean Peninsula since 2017. Well, welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for being here today. So please, let's start with the Bomber Task Force mission. Can you both give us just a bit of background on the Bomber Task Force and your wing's operations?
To give you a little background on the Bomber Task Force, or BTFs, the global environment has changed, and so has the B-1 and the 20th Bomb Wing, and BTFs are just a key part of that. In fact, Bomber Task Force will really become foundational to our training, our deployment, and contingency model to match that changing environment. Over the past few years, since we've exited our continuous bomber presence or deployments to the Middle East and CENTCOM, we've done BTF deployments to a variety of locations around the globe, such as Andersen Air Force Base, Guam, down at Diego Garcia, as well as in Europe at Fairford. BTFs were designed to provide strategic deterrence as well as assure and strengthen our relationships with allies and partners. For us specifically, BTFs it's the valuable integration and training we get that is a key part of it. It improves allied and joint interoperability. We've been using them to develop TTPs or the tactics, techniques, and procedures. Overall strengthen our warfighting readiness and capability, and they've allowed us to kind of push the envelopes on bomber agile combat employment. BTFs are different in a couple ways. First, they're typically light and lean in scale, both in aircraft and in personnel. They're relatively short in duration, ranging from a couple weeks to potentially a couple months. They're more episodic in occurrence because of the duration and because of the global focus. And we go to a wide range of locations. So really, they're a key part of our training for our wing and our global focus, because the wing's mission is pretty simple. It's to provide combat power for the nation, long-range strike, anytime, anywhere. And I don't think we've been on a BTF yet, and yours included, where we didn't support multiple combat commands. We usually call them cross-command missions, and they're really the norm. For example, I was thinking of the one in the fall. We went to Diego Garcia in support of the Indo-Pacific. And not only did we, exercise and train and do operations with Australia, Japan, South Korea, the Singaporeans, but we also went into CENTCOM and went with 8 different countries and partners in that AOR. So that just gives you a flavor of what the Bomber Task Force is and the wide range of it. Anything you want to say, Orkin, on that?
Yes, sir. I mean, from the squadron's perspective, it's just an amazing opportunity to get out there and show the B-1's long-range strike capabilities. It's an opportunity for us to train, to integrate with allies and partners, and then get out there and actually do the mission in a theater away from home station. So it's a great opportunity for the squadrons.
Thank you very much. A great intro. But to get a bit more into the audience's understanding what it's like to really be in the fight, if you will. I think we all understand that the B-1 was first developed as a low-level nuclear penetrator during the Cold War, and then after 9/11 was heavily attached and used in close air support in Afghanistan and Iraq. As you shifted now to employing the bomber in bomber task force missions, you're obviously thinking about great power competition and the critical role of the bomber in a pure fight. So could you talk through that a little bit? You've suggested that tactics, techniques, and procedures are changing. But within a sort of a more global perspective, it seems that the long-range strike capabilities of the B-1 have never been so important to the Indo-PACOM fight, or as you would support other combat commanders, as you talked about.
Absolutely. Orkin, I'll probably push this over to you, but let me just start for 1 second. The B-1 and our community have always adapted the airframe and our tactics to the latest technology and focus of the day, just like you were talking about, constantly trying to learn and evolve and innovate. And it's still the mentality prevalent in the community. Just think of where the B-1 was originally, what it was really designed to do, and how we've adapted it to its strengths for what we've needed it to do. And what we do now is pretty incredible. So like you said, initially low altitude nuclear penetrator, executing pop to level nuclear releases at preset altitudes and designated points. It transitioned to a nuclear only bomber with large payloads and imprecise and guided gravity weapons. When I entered the community, we were just transitioning out of that, of these dumb bombs, to near precision GPS guided JDAM weapons, which was a huge transition to improve our efficiency and effectiveness with its accuracy. And it wasn't long before the targeting pod came on, and again, it was a significant increase, allowing us to move, strike moving targets and vehicles, and in the counter-terrorist fight, in Afghanistan and Iraq. And today the B-1's transition again, and our focus is absolutely the long-range standoff cruise missile. Our goal here at Ellsworth, the 20th Bomb Wing, and in the community is to be the CAF experts in planning and employing a JASM, or the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, as well as the long-range anti-ship missile, the RASM. Do you want to talk a little bit about how, as a squadron, how you employ it and its impacts from the last BTF?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. And to kind of piggyback on that, so I remember as a young B-1 aviator jumping into a squadron. My first deployment was in 2008 in the summer, and it was the first B-1 deployment with a sniper pod, so our first targeting pod capabilities. And really from there, just in my time frame, seeing how the airframe has adapted to what the capabilities that it has and what we can use it for into either the next fight or what we think the next fight is going to be. It's a fully glass cockpit integrated airplane now. It's got Link 16. It's got beyond line of sight data links that we can use to update targets real time. We can use our sensors to help find and fix targets and pass those on to other assets. And then with the fact that we have 4 aviators in the airplane, we can all work as a team. It's no longer the pilots fly the airplane, whizzes are in the back working sensors and inputting targets into the system or monitoring our defensive systems. It is an entire crew mentality of we are backing each other up. And so we can use those capabilities that the B-1 has really to provide the combatant commanders a long-range strike platform with standoff weapons, including JASM, the Joint Air-Surface Standoff Missile, and our LRASM capability, the long-range anti-ship missile, in addition to the precision-guided munitions that we can carry. We're a great platform for that. We have the largest 2,000-pound JDAM capability of any platform by carrying 24. We have the largest JASM payload of any platform. The fact that we can carry 24 of those weapons. We're the only Air Force asset right now that can carry and employ the LRASM. And we want our aviators to be the CAF experts in employing all of those weapons. We need to know how to mission plan them, how to integrate them, make them a part of a large dynamic force package that's going to go into the next fight, and how they integrate with 5th gen assets and the capabilities that those bring as well for that next conflict. We're trying to develop the best TTPs for employing standoff weapons and precision guided munitions dynamically. And there's a lot of capability for that within the B-1. It's just incredible to see what the platform was originally designed for and how we've adapted the strengths that it has to go take it into the next fight. It's pretty incredible.
And one thing, let me just add really quick. I think, as we left from, the nearly 2 decades in the counterterrorism fight to now this bomber task force deployments and Conus to Conus. Really what it offers, it provides a dynamic and responsive aspect to the globe. They're proactive in nature. They can kind of set the tempo. Not only is it strategic deterrence, but it challenges the decision calculus of the adversary. And it really allows the team to get a lot more training across the globe with a lot more allies and partners. And so there's a lot of benefits that it provides, as for this great power competition.
Enthralling. The two of you talking to our audience together, really, you do a great job of framing a broader perspective at sort of the strategic operational level, and then really what happens in the airplane. Could you kind of go around the loop one more time? It sounds like you've taken really what we often talk about now, JADC2, Joint All-Domain Command and Control, or ABMS. And when Chris was talking about sensors and communications, Link 16, could you talk about how you communicate also with partner nations, the allies, your allied experience, your coalition and allies experience, especially during the recent Bomber Task Force deployment?
Do you want to talk about the recent one?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Yeah, and thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity to talk about it, because it was an awesome experience to be a part of. I was fortunate to lead the 37th Bomb Squadron out on about a month-long BTF deployment to Andersen into the Indo-PACOM theater, and really for us for that, we had a lot of objectives for the deployment, but a lot of our focus was on integrating with our Navy partners, exercising joint interoperability, and then operating with those allied and partner nations in the region and conducting freedom of navigation operations across the theater. We were able to participate in the last day of the Vigilant Storm exercise with our ROCAF partners. And then also the Keen Sword exercise was one of our major focuses going into the BTF to exercise with fellow Air Force assets that are out there in PACAF, Navy and Marine forces, and then also the JASDEF partners that we have. And a lot of our training leading up to that and then going into the BTF was to demonstrate proficiency in employing LRASM in the maritime environment. That was a lot of our focus. And we are the threshold platform for the Air Force for LRASM. We've got some of the best LRASM experts right here in the B1 community and right here at the 28th Bomb Wing. And we've focused a lot of our training plans on becoming those LRASM experts, working along with the Navy and trying to develop the TTPs to perfect those capabilities. And again, the BTFs, it's a great opportunity for us to exercise those in real time with CAF forces and then also across the Navy fleet and then with our allies and partners. One of the big highlights that we had as a part of Keen Sword was executing a hot pit operation at Misawa, where we landed a B-1, refueled and launched it there. And again, it's an opportunity for us to take a small maintenance footprint, deploy them kind of to a non-traditional bomber location, someplace else, either within one of the islands that are there or with our allies and partners that are out there. We've also done them in Australia before and some of the other places that are around. We determine the suitability for us to conduct operations there, and then really ultimately it expands our footprint and our operating capability within those theaters, just in case there aren't tanker aircraft are available, or to enable us to get to a fight, execute, and then recover and get back home, and really just provide some flexibility. And then finally, one of the big highlights for us is we provided the combatant commander response option to some of the real world events that occurred while we were there. And so for one of those responses, we were able to, within hours of it occurring, launching 2 B-1s, which was a phenomenal job by our maintenance and ops personnel, because this was all in addition to the already busy scheduled flight ops that we had going on. We were able to launch 2 aircraft, rejoin into a formation with our ROCAF partners and our JASDEF partners and some of the other PACAF assets that are out there, fly a coalition formation, demonstrate our collective strength with our ally and partner nations. And it really just shows the flexibility that a BTF can provide, and then what our long-range bomber forces can provide as well. It's a huge aspect, I think, of strategic deterrence. It assures our allies and partner nations that we're going to be there in the theater when needed. And I think it's got to make any potential adversary weigh the consequences of any action they take.
Chris, that's great. I'm guessing if I'm your wing commander, you're making me pretty proud. So, Joe, would you like to add on a bit to the training now that your B-1 crews are home? There's a lot more Conus training going on to maintain that level of readiness. So could you talk a bit about that, range space available, and also the ability to use the comms to link up in either a joint or bomber fighter operations. And, comms have become so important, and maybe even linkage with Reapers and Predators as kind of leading into collaborative combat aircraft operations.
Absolutely. The first for Conus to Conus, those type of operations have become some of our bread and butter aspects of what we do. And we see it important not only for training and for integration and making sure the comms work, but also really for combat. So what is a Conus to Conus mission? I mean, it makes sense. We'll launch a formation of B1s from here. We typically execute some type of a mission or integration exercise, sometimes multiple on a sortie, and sometimes multiple AORs. And typically they happen in the 20+ hour time of the mission, and it'll be anywhere around the globe, and then we recover back home. So a Conus mission is usually 24 hours in duration. We've had a handful go into the 30+ hour time frame. Why are they important? One, as you said, to work the JADC2 situation or just the communication, whether it's line of sight, whether it's beyond line of sight, for partner nations, very specifically, if you think of a few that we've done in Indo-Pacific with our Navy folks as well. And it's key because we think we need to be ready to fight here from Ellsworth. We think it's critically important. And we talk to our operators and maintainers and our support personnel to approach work at Ellsworth as though they are in the area of responsibility, where we'll take off a formation from here. We'll go to whatever geographic command. We'll fly to, we'll strike the targets anywhere on the globe, return home to Ellsworth, and then we're going to turn those jets again and fly them again for another mission. So not only do we look at Conus for this BTF and strategic deterrence and challenging the adversary, as well as a normal training, primarily with communications, with being dynamic. I remember in the old days, in the counterterrorism fight, we'd take off sometimes with 24 targets with our 24, 2,000-pound, GPS weapons, and en route, we would get refragged for those, and we'd be, working that pretty regularly. But you can imagine now with 40, a two-ship, if you have 48 JASM that now need to be replanned, potentially en route for a long duration sortie, working out the communication, working out how best you're going to defeat the threats, ensure you're going to no-fly areas. It's pretty impressive, but it's something that we focus on and work to, and not only here at home, but on all of these type of missions, because we think it's something we're going to have to be ready to do potentially in conflict.
For both of you, you're really the experts on taking your total force, your total team, including your multi-capable airmen, deploying around the world or operating from Ellsworth. Could you talk a bit about how you see multi-capable airmen operating, how they're evolving? My guess is when you landed at Misawa, you had some multi-capable airmen that may or may not have refueled a B1 before. But that's probably just one example. I think the other concern really, or where your Air and Space Force Association want to help, is we want to advocate for the airmen and the capabilities that you need against what seems like an insatiable demand from combatant commanders for what B1s and Ellsworth brings to the fight.
Maybe I'll jump in on this first.
Yeah,
I think for the multi-capable airman aspect, really, and we're taking this right from the chief, right? We're moving out on his directives, but we're treating it more as a mindset than a checklist or a certification. It's basically how we approach any challenge or problem. Yes, we've scoped different trainings within the wing. I think of my civil engineering and security forces that partner together for specific skill sets and capabilities on field training exercises. Had a chance to see that. And just 2 weeks ago, the munitions squadron, they have something that's called they call it a boot camp, but it's a 5-day ACE or Agile Combat Employment and Multi-Capable Airmen exercise, where they take the weapons builders and loaders. They simulate they're in an austere location. They receive munitions parts. They build the weapons. They load them. They prepare them on pallets for another relocation. So it's aggressive and it's impressive. And to be honest with you, the multi-capable airman, it's in the DNA of just the B1 community in general. Every aviator that comes in, whether you're a pilot or WISO, I think Orkin already talked about it, you learn every position and task in the jet for each mission set. So a young pilot doesn't, he needs to know every WISO function, every weapon employment function, every, standard radar function and defensive. And so that's key. But when you think of, going to the Japan, we have, we're just trying to make sure we have this training and this aggressive mindset that we can do multiple things. We can be innovative, and we can answer different challenges. Any thoughts you have, Orkin?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. So, the executing hot pits at locations where we don't normally operate is going to be a challenge. So we're asking those teams that go out there to do things that may not necessarily be in their primary duties, that they're going to have to adapt to whatever environment they show up in and be able to execute it, because we've got to get the mission done. So we're taking steps to think through how we can do that in squadrons. Even in the maintenance team that we had out there, we used the opportunity while we were out at Andersen to train up some of the other folks that were on the base as well. Hey, just in case, let's show you how to refuel a B1. Let's show you how to do some minor maintenance on it, just in case we needed them. And there may not be a maintenance team there in place at the time that we would need them. So it's taking that proactive mindset of where can we gain either efficiencies or gain advantages, and then ask people to do things that may not necessarily be in their primary duty set, but they can definitely help out to make sure that the mission is a success.
One thing I was thinking about that is, we've done on primarily BTF deployments, but also on some Conus to Conus, multiple bomber ace type events to include his turns. I was thinking I've done a few times in Australia, taken formations there, hot pitted them. They did a full, I think 11-hour mission. I did a small force exercise, landed, then we turned it and flew again. And during that, we were using some of the local base folks in Australia. So in other words, our coalition partners, done in Japan a few times, as well as Germany. So ultimately, not only within our own team and perhaps Air Force team, but also any other joint or coalition location. We're just, so we're all kind of one team, one fight, getting after of that mindset in that way.
Well, I have to tell you, this is exciting. I commanded the wing of Misawa at one time. I can't imagine the B-1 landing at Misawa the first time. The entire community, including the Japanese community, Misawa City, I'm sure was fired up. But let's move on just a bit. Of course, we want to talk about the B-21. But before we do that, how about the readiness of your current Lancer force? There's a transition going on here. Now, listening to you, I'm pretty positive about that, in that you're building the B-21 force right now with your multi-capable airmen, your pilots, your WISOs, the entire community at Ellsworth. So that certainly provides a path, but we also know transitions can be challenging. So how are you maintaining, or are there some issues with maintaining the Lancers' readiness and lethality until the B-21 comes online?
Yeah, really, I would say there's three ways. Training, like we've been talking about, the maintenance logistics, and then the modernization innovation. How about quickly talk about one of our maintenance? We have a couple of different maintenance items that we are getting after, but one is our maintainers, and we know air power starts with the hands, the feet, and the effort of the maintainers. That's and especially with the B1. But our team's developed and implemented a number of different innovative techniques. Two processes that we call, one is theory of constraints, and the other is deep clean. Ultimately, what are they? They're practices that increase the focus on targeted aircraft, and then they also leverage what the jet's telling us. So theory of constraints is basically controls the work in progress. Instead of focusing on every jet on the ramp, we focus on specific aircraft at a specific time to make sure that they're ready to go. At that same time, we do a deep clean. In other words, we do inspection and repairs that are preventative in nature, based on discrepancies that come from our internal system, saying, hey, here's the health of this aircraft. We're seeing a number of different, potential indicators. And so what we do is that maybe, impact just the health writ large, or be red ball drivers. And so what we do is, with this theory of constraints of using targeted aircraft and then also taking the information that it's giving us. We do preventive maintenance, and it's been a game changer for us at Ellsworth. For example, I was thinking of flight controls. A ground aborts, we've reduced them by 70% this year on the flight control aspect, which is a pretty key aspect to a big bomber that has swept wings, lots of moving parts, and with high speeds. And so that's just one example of some things that we're doing to keep it to go on. Another innovative aspect that I'll just quickly touch on, because started years ago. I was thinking when I was in Orkin's shoes, it was General Weatherington and General Kennedy. They were pushing, but it's called cold spray. And it was something I was like, this is amazing. What it is, metallic cold spray is literally spraying metal on a broken part to repair it. Not only does it repair it, but actually it restores this part. What it is it's accelerated metallic particles that are shot at high speed and low temperatures onto a parent material. And what that does with the high speed, the metal forms a molecular bond and actually becomes now part of the parent material. And when it comes at low temperatures, it prevents the future metal from degrading when heat comes up. It's something that we initially started with unserviceable aircraft parts, maybe rivet holes in panels, but now we've used it for a number of things: hydraulic tubes, skin panels, and some of the hydraulic tubes are now flown over 6,000 hours with this cold spray technology. We've done it partnered with a university down here, but I think it's a game changer on some of these older aircraft, which pretty much every bomber is right now. But this year we were the first to do it, actually spray on an aircraft on a B-1 overwing fairing joint slip, and now we've flown it. It saved $500,000 and I think over half a year of NMC. And we're looking to palletize it and make it mobile, so it's something we could use at a contingency ACE-like event. And so those are just a few of the things that we're doing as we bridge the B-1, and we see it going well into the future. But until the B-21's in sufficient time and sufficient numbers, we're going to execute the B-1, and those are just a few of the things that our maintenance team's doing.
Well, I got to tell you, y'all are phenomenal, and it sounds like there's a partnership already and constantly evolving with the industry, and responsibly integrating advanced technology opportunities, which are going to keep you ahead of the fight. But let's please take some time now. I know everyone is interested and talk about the B-21. In that Ellsworth will be the first B-21 operating base. What's going on with your B-21 bed down, and what can you share with us about maybe timelines, but whatever you're really comfortable sharing with us as you look forward to the B-21 coming to Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Yes, sir. It is an exciting time at Ellsworth and for the local community, being the first main operating base for the B-21. First, it's going to be a huge transition from a B-1 conventional only to low observable nuclear capable B-21, and so it's a transition really at all levels. But when you look at what is coming, it's over a period of time, a decade or so. We're going to bring in 1,700 new active duty airmen to support the B-21, and over 30 military construction projects that are more than $1 billion. So kind of the major groups that are in are the Operation Maintenance Campus. Right now, we're working on our new flying training unit because the B-21 flying FTU is going to be here. We're working on basically the simulator building, as well as our mission planning facility and some maintenance areas. A next major place is going to be our weapons generation facility. That will be a big lift that is part of the construction. Our nuclear command and control communications within our command posts, and then just the medical side of our PRP, or the Personality Reliability Assurance Program. So really, it's over 30 big projects. We have 6 that are well underway. We broke ground on our low observable maintenance hangar this past spring in May, and now you can see it going vertical. It's coming to fruition. Unfortunately, well, your squadron's okay, but his sister combat squadron, the 34th, their parking lot's completely, torn up and right next to them where the FTU is going. So overall, I guess what I was saying is, as we set the table for the B-21, it's infrastructure, which is a big part of it, but it's also a shift in our operation support culture for the LO and the nuclear. And I think we're in a good spot. We're aggressively moving out on it. And what I would say and what I appreciate with the entire team is, we're executing the B-1 global mission, and that's our no-fail, strike and strategic deterrence capability. At the same time, the B-21 bed down is it's a full mission unto itself. And so the team's working well to make that happen. And we're excited to have it to fly up here and fly in the community and wherever else we go.
And really, sir, I think there's a lot of aircrew that are excited about the possibility of flying a B-21. We know that we're going to have folks that are in squadrons right now that are probably going to get that opportunity in their career. But the B-1's also not going anywhere, and it's going to remain a viable long-range strike bomber for the foreseeable future right now. And we're still executing our TTPs to be ready to do that. Again, we're the premier JASM platform, and for our training scenarios that we're putting together, we're focusing on what that next global fight potentially is going to be. We have to be ready for any AOR that's out there. We have to be ready for any threat that is out there, whether or not that's an air threat, a surface threat, a maritime threat, and all of those are adapting and evolving and getting more challenging. So we've got to be ready for that, and that's going to translate directly to the B-21. For our normal training here, we're consistently focusing on being ready to employ either against 48 targets, 96 targets, whatever it is. If it's a 2-ship of B-1s that are going out and executing, they're going to be ready for 48 targets. If it's more aircraft than that, they're going to be ready for 96. We're developing our next generation of aircrew to be able to do that. We just executed a sortie last week where we are prepping one of our instructor pilots here. So a captain getting ready to go to weapons school in January. And we took some of the challenges that we see in the global environment right now and are trying to translate to how we do that in a training mentality here, where we decided to stand up to, and by we, it was our weapons officers that are here in the squadron at the wing that put together a phenomenal scenario where we had a dislocated NPC at Ellsworth and a dislocated NPC at Dias at the other B-1 base. And we gave them over 100 targets and said, you guys have got to sort through this, plan for it, come up with a game plan. And we're going to go execute in the local airspace here in Powder River Training Complex that we have just north of Ellsworth, where we gave them over 100 targets. They had to come up with a game plan, mission plan from 2 separate locations. Then we ended up launching two ships from each of those. So 2 aircraft from Ellsworth, 2 aircraft from Dias. We met in the Powder River Complex, executed the plan, made sure that they had to dynamically retarget them in flight, and then come back on the ground and debrief. So, those are all the challenges that we're going to see. It's all the things that we're trying to prep our aviators for, and the ones that will eventually end up in the B-21. They'll be ready and be able to do that.
Well, outstanding. What a great rundown. We're going to provide the audience an opportunity to ask some questions, either online or I'll read the questions if the audience wants to put them in through chat. If you have a question, again, please raise your hand, and our team will cover. We'll get to you as quickly as we can. And when you do come up on the net, please state your name, your background, unmute your microphone, and then again, you can drop questions in the chat box if you don't come up live. So let me turn to Greg Hadley from Air and Space Forces Magazine first. Greg, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Please, Greg.
Awesome. Yeah, for Colonel Sheffield, you mentioned, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about kind of the leanness and the agileness associated with these bomber task force missions. And I was curious if you could just expand on that and explain kind of the thinking behind that and what it provides on these missions.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. So for us, we're trying to focus a little bit more on our agile combat employment capabilities. What does that mean for a bomber? What does it mean for the B-1, and how would we do that? Also, as we go on these bomber task force, they're typically pretty short in duration. And being short in duration, and they're also episodic, so they're going to continue to come back around. So we want to we're scoping it such that we can, we're pretty, most of the squad there, but then we can continue doing exercises, training and upgrades here. And it also allows us to use or look at some of that more dynamic situations and some of the more logistically challenged. For example, when we did the continuous continuous bomber presence or the counterterrorist fight, we'd go to a base that's well established, well set up. But here, we want our aviators, maintainers, and logistic personnel to experience challenges of being away from that type of establishment, also away from our home station. What does the logistics trains look like? How do the multi-domain operations get established with not only the line of sight, but beyond line of sight? So all of those are items and things that we look at. And with it being small, we can be a little bit more dynamic on a larger, to go more locations and more places. So that has been some of the primary reasoning and thinking of that. But we can rheostat that to whatever the command needs and desires at the time, as they requested.
And if I can just ask a quick follow-up of Colonel McConnell, I was curious, how does this kind of play into, you mentioned the responsiveness of being able to respond to real world events, in particular this last bomber task force flying over Korea. So how does that kind of, the leanness or the agility there, what opportunities does it present and what challenges does it present?
Well, I mean, it provides some great opportunities because, at the moment that we are on a BTF, we're there in the theater and can respond very, very quickly to something that occurred, to an event that occurred. But it also is starting to establish what those communication links are going to be like in that theater, so that we're familiar with the operating environment and we're exposing our air crew to how those operations are going to occur. When, as growing up as a young B-1 aviator, there were many of us who we had taken off at Ellsworth or landed at Ellsworth. We'd taken off and landed at Dias. We went to our forward deployed location out in CENTCOM, but we didn't have that much dynamic employment, if you will. It was a very continuous presence to the location that we were going. And that was what we were familiar with. And that was what the majority of our TTPs were built upon, because we had limited time based on that deployment schedule to go do other things. Now it's a global challenge. We're all over the place. We have young aviators and aircrew that have literally flown almost across the entire world, if you take into account the different AORs that they've gone to and that they've been exposed to. Aircrew that have landed on Diego and that have employed out of there, aircrew that have landed and employed out of Andersen or in Europe. The Conus to Conus missions that we execute, the BTFs that we execute, those all provide opportunities for our aviators to get exposed to what that global environment is going to look like, to what we need to be ready for, to see the challenges that we have in communication, both line of sight and beyond line of sight, with how we're going to employ. And then it also gives them confidence just to operate in those environments. We're asking aircrew to fly. I think our longest sortie that we had was 37 hours, which is just an incredibly long time to be in an aircraft. And there's a lot of challenges that are associated with that. And our aircrew are gaining the confidence because they're doing it. They're doing it on a regular basis. They're able to link up with a tanker in the middle of the ocean at night. It's hour 20 of your sortie. You get 100,000 pounds of gas, and you're continuing on, whether or not that's going to be to go exercise in the theater where you're traveling into, or to get the aircraft back home safely so we can turn it and do it again the next day. Our aircrew are getting exposed to a lot of events just through the Conus to Conus and Bomber Task Force challenges that we have, to be able to operate really around the globe.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Greg. We have a question also from Michael Gordon. Michael, please go ahead.
Thank you. It's Michael Gordon, Wall Street Journal. I have a rather kind of step back question. Secretary Austin has said repeatedly that China is the pacing threat. So there are many dangers around the world, and he's established that as the priority. Given that, from your perspective as operators, why is a bomber task force concept better than a continuous bomber presence in the very region in which we have the greatest concern? it's certainly not cheaper. So what is the what are the advantages, and how do you compare the two? Thank you.
No, thank you. I think some of the real benefits of the Bomber Task Force is that you can be proactive. You can be a little bit more unpredictable. So if we're providing the strategic deterrence, but also trying to challenge their decision calculus and what some of their choices are and what they're doing, I think what BTFs do is it's with its episodic and with its different timing and different maybe durations, it's different exercises and training in those. It allows us, I think personally, to set that tempo and be a little bit more dynamic and diverse in that regard. I also think what it does is it shows that we are focused on China in here. That's what we're following that line. But we also realize there's other actors on the geopolitical scale that we need to keep training for, and so we do that. And right now, with that environment and being the only coalition or partner nation that has bombers, we realize we need to be ready to do those type of missions. Because the strength of the bombers, and specifically the B-1, is to be able to go anywhere around the globe. So even being here from home station, we have a range, or if you go into BTF, we can still go thousands of miles in range. Its payload, Orkin was talking whether you have 24 cruise missiles now or other type of weapons. And if we put externals, I can go up to 36, long endurance and high speed. So I think it just allows a little bit more unpredictability to the adversary and puts them a little bit more, hey, what is happening and what's going on? And I think those are some of the main benefits and opportunities at the strategic and operational level. The tactical level, it's absolutely readiness generating because we can go to multiple exercises with multiple partners and doing lots of different things. Again, primarily focusing on the Pacific, but also other regions.
Thanks, great response. I'm going to read a question from Albert Lee. It's a good one. The B-21 unveiling touched upon how the Raider will be more connected than previous bombers to other systems and platforms. Certainly vertical integration with satellites and horizontal integration with collaborative combat aircraft. How does the B-1 today currently use the connectivity you have, including in the Indo-PACOM fight? And then how do you see building on that and going further with the Raider?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I can jump on this one, sir. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. We have a beyond line of sight data link capability. We have a line of sight data link capability, and then it's again going back to the fact that we have 4 aircrew in the aircraft that are 100% capable at backing each other up and working as a team to execute that. So there are multiple systems in there, whether or not it's using our sensors to go out and either provide NTISR, which is non-traditional ISR capabilities, to provide targeting in that find and fix phase. We can do that and then pass that information back via data links or via beyond line of sight communication links in order to provide dynamic targeting and to build that mindset. When we take off from a sortie, we know that our targets are probably going to change at some point, or we're at least building that mentality into our aircrew of there's the potential and the high probability that you're going to have to dynamically retarget some of those things. And so it's using all of those communication nodes and the ability to train to and be ready to execute in those to execute dynamically and to be able to do that within a sortie.
Great, thanks. Got a couple questions from Thomas Stagliano. I'll roll together. First of all, how often do you use the airfield at Diego Garcia? Do you base there for any length of time or only refuel and resupply? And then I'd add on a question from Tom. Have you refueled from the KC-46 and how has that been compared to the 135 or the KC-10?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been to Diego Garcia. It's been historically a significant bomber presence and location. So it's one that we've taken BTFs deployments to. It's one that we also can do a full mission. We can then hot pit and then now just extend that range for another mission in another AOR and additional training. And so it's absolutely a key location and place that we use regularly. And so, and for the air refueling, I'll be honest with you, it flies. I mean, it's normal. So for us on one of these long duration sorties, you know, I haven't done the 30-hour one, thank goodness. But the longest one, you know, for me was the, you know, the 24-hour range. And so you're doing 4 air refuelings, taking on 100,000 pounds of gas. And so our folks are pretty used to it, and pretty, you know, it's not very, at night it could be somewhat difficult taking that much gas, and depending on your duration of sortie. But the KC-46 has refueled just cleanly and well. We have no problems or difficulties with that. And you guys just refueled with the Singaporeans on this last deployment, correct?
We did, but
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and there's really no difference, or there are slight differences between each tanker that you see, whether or not it's a KC-135, a KC-46, a KC-10, or KC-30. But we have the ability to do it against all of those. We train to all of those, and our aviators get exposed to each one of them. So they're really, it really is transparent to us in terms of, you know, we are reliant sometimes on our tankers in order to be able to execute that global mission, and we train to being ready to refuel off of any one of those, whichever ones are in theater.
And they all work great.
Great response. Thanks from the experts, no doubt. So from Kenneth Katz, with regard to anti-shipping missions using LRASM, have B-1s exercised with the Navy Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft?
Can you hear the question?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have exercised with Navy aircraft in terms of how we're going to execute those TTPs that we're building, and that's part of going out, and we do that here, home station training, whether or not it's flying out to a coast to execute and operate and train to that, whether or not we're doing it in exercises locally, or while we're out on BTFs, or even during Conus to Conus missions. A Conus to Conus mission is still a part of that as a training mission for us to be able to exercise those capabilities and try and integrate with those other platforms.
Yeah, it's definitely a key. It's key for every time we go to the Pacific, and we definitely integrate with the Navy for those LRASM.
Terrific. One last question from the audience from Ryan Finnerty. Ryan, please go ahead. Ryan, go ahead after you've done mute your mic, and the floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me?
You bet.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate the time. I'm with Flight International Magazine. I was wondering if you could briefly talk about pilot training for the B-21. We're expecting the first aircraft to be fielded sometime in the mid-2020s is what we're hearing from the Pentagon. How will that work? Will you transition current pilots to the new airframe, or just train new pilots from the ground up? And when will that process begin?
So when the B-21 comes on board, and as it gets in its sufficient numbers to provide, you know, our strategic missions, the B-1 and the B-2 will both sunset, and we'll end up with a force of B-21s and B-52s. As that transition takes place, we're to have pilots flow into the B-21 from all avenues, from the normal pilot training pipeline. They will come and arrive in the B-21. You know, its initial cadre will come from each of the bomber wings, taking some of the good, you know, the LO aspects of the B-2, maybe some of the nuclear aspects of the B-52, our conventional and dynamic aspect of the B-1. So that'll be some of the initial cadre. And what it'll do, so pilots will come from normal pilot training. They'll also come from those platforms and potentially other platforms around the Air Force. You know, as the B-1 sunsets, you know, whenever that time is in the future, we'll have also weapon systems officers that there's lots of places we can use them, but another one you could potentially use them is go to pilot training and also join in on the B-21 cadre and pilot force already having a great strategic, tactical, or more tactical background, that is. And so we're gonna take those from all those aspects, but in the short term, and that initial cadre will be from the current CAF force that we have, making sure we're setting a great foundation for the B-21 as it goes forward.
Well, as we wrap up, for Chris and Joe, we cannot thank you enough, but we'd like to also, your Air and Space Forces Association, would like to thank your spouses and your families. Family readiness is combat readiness, as we all know. Would you like to elaborate just a bit on just living in South Dakota, being at Ellsworth is certainly the support you get from the community, and then whatever else you'd like to talk about for the next few minutes as we close out today. And again, we cannot thank you enough.
Hey, sir, absolutely. As you said that, what came to my mind, first off, Ellsworth's an amazing base, and the location's phenomenal. In the Black Hills, Mount Rushmore, just 20 miles away. It's a phenomenal place. In the winter, you can snow ski, and in the spring, summer, fall, a lot of outdoor items to do. But what comes to my mind is, we just had the celebration, or maybe a better word, commemoration of Pearl Harbor. When that happened in December 1941, it was less than 1 month that the Rapid Army Airfield was established. It was established 80 years ago this year in January of 1942. They trained B-17 pilots, B-17 maintainers, and as well as support personnel. And so that's the type of community we live in. They 100% support the Air Force and our families. When we come in, we become part of it's our home, and they're great neighbors. The other thing that's interesting about this area is, this year, so it's a big year for Ellsworth. It's also the 80th anniversary of the Doolittle raid, and we are the 20th Bomb Wing Raiders. They were bold, brave, and innovative, and we try to be the same. Again, Pearl Harbor, 4 months later, we had 16 B-25 bombers taken off the deck of an aircraft carrier to go do the infamous Doolittle raid. The 37th Bomb Squadron, the 34th Bomb Squadron, and our 89th Attack Squadron were all part of it. Doing the first agile combat employment, really showcasing what it's like, the first long-range strike in our nation's history, and the first victory of World War II. So for us, Ellsworth's an awesome place. The Black Hills are amazing. And I would just say, family-wise, we want everybody, to leave, say, hey, that's the assignment I want to go back to, and that's the pace I want to do. And we all know that it's a team sport. Every family member, they are just as involved or focused on this mission as we are. And so we appreciate, as you said, that whether it's AFA or all the other partners, to help make sure we take care of those families and retain them, and let them know that we appreciate what they did.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much again, and please stay in touch. Your Air and Space Forces Association is on your wing, including those 37-hour missions. I don't know how you get that done, but we can't thank you enough. just a terrific rundown of everything about the 28th Bomb Wing, and all that your pilots and your WISOs, your maintainers, and the entire wing community and the wing team brings to the defense of our nation. God bless. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. We're on.